What is the role of infinity within a world which we experience with finite objects around us? And the role of infinity is to remind, if we were to use that word, to re-mind, as in the mind, the role of ourselves, that we have an active part and we have a passive part, and that our natural tendency is to have an active relationship with finite objects, which is completely normal and understandable for very simple reasons, and those reasons are for survival mechanisms, for pleasure, and for sustenance of those pleasures, and avoidance of pain, and creating novelty based off of those habits, already existing habits. And so the natural activity would be to relate to finite objects. And in everyday life, we relate to those through the objects of our everyday life, our house, our work, our leisures, our pastimes, whether it be video games, TV shows, working out, traveling. All these, even though space is ubiquitous in the experience of all those activities, and a necessary precedent for each of those moments of experience, the acknowledgement of space itself as an object, if we were to use that word, or as a unique characteristic, is not focused upon. It's not a point of interest. It's not acknowledged. And this type of relationship of the activity, and I mean by activity not only the momentum that is created throughout life in the momentum of the habits. So if we were to look at an individual and see the sets of habits that they have and the likelihood that they won't change those habits, we can predict with some accuracy, not counting the creative novelties that they would create for themselves. We could predict the pathways of their life. And so this activity of the momentum is one dimension. The other dimension is the creative part, which seeks new connections in an active way. The creative search for novelty, or the creativity for novelty. And that novelty is usually still done by and I'm not saying that it is in a criticism, but that novelty is made again through objects in a finite sense. But so again, pose the question, then what is the role of infinity, if it were to have any, is that if we focus on the infinite space, or when infinite space is focused upon, it changes the dependency of those habits. And it also changes the dependency of our relationship to objects in general, which thus then opens up a whole new category of creativity. And that category is one that is without dependence, if we were to take the self identifying itself fully from a spatial point of view, or this infinite point of view. It would give a sense of quality and presence of being in a dreamlike state, not in the sense that we are not paying attention, or that everything is happening in in a fairy tale manner, necessarily, but in the sense that there is a very relaxed point of reference. That relaxed point of reference is a full presence of the self in space, first and foremost, and then objects being secondary. Now, this is a process of entanglement, and insofar as entanglement is needed, is the road or the path towards infinity. And that path is, the length of that path is built with the bricks of our habits. And once that path ends, all that remains is that focus of space, that infinite space, that quality of presence. And when the self then identifies with this infinite space, it can return in a little bit of a dramatic sense, I suppose. It can return to the world of objects with a sense of freedom, that it has no longer a dependence that is structured in their habits, or no longer has a habit of dependence on particular objects and is freely able to move between objects. It is, in Eastern philosophy, it is called the detachment from the world. But really, if we were to put it in define it in this new context, it would be the attachment to the infinite, or to nest the self in the infinite, and then from there the creativity can occur. And so the role of the infinite from that point of view is a reminder. Just as people who have occasional lucid dreams, that when they are dreaming, they're occasionally reminded that they are in a dream. And lucid dreams, for those who have experience with it, know that even when you are reminded of that you are dreaming, and thus having a lucid moments in your dream, within the dream there's a tendency to fall back asleep and forgetting that it is a dream. But while there is that lucidity within the dream, there is a conscious creation that can happen, that is free to create. Or there is a surrendering, letting the dream play itself out while knowing it is a dream and experiencing it to a very lucid depth, which is very easily remembered when woken up. And the experience is all that much more profound. Or to go back to the activity of creating and participating with the dream if it were lucid. But just as the self needs to reach that point of lucidity of the infinite and let go of the particulars, just as in the dream you let go of whatever particulars are being dreamt, and you realize it's just a dream, and therefore the lucidity occurs, and the objects of the dreams no longer sway you back to sleep, or they do. And when they do, the lucidity is forgotten. And so the presence of space is a reminder that there is an absolute quality that hosts all things, all finite things, and that it actually stems from there, just as the dream stems from the dreamer. And so this reminding first needs to be minded And so a habit is created from the person that is focusing on the space, either in a meditative or contemplative or ritualistic manner, creating a habit of minding space with its infinite quality, getting to know its experience, getting to know its palpable presence, discovering its qualities in a very personal sense. And then from that, out of the sheer habit of walking that path, infinity will also remind you of this. And without going into grand intellectualization structures. I mean, it might happen naturally for people who are over analytical or analytical in tendencies. But here, the presence of its quality, right, of space, the experience of it will create an identity of what reality is. And then, as time goes by, as certain habits are undone, which are not generally conducive to the well-being of your experience of life. And so, as those habits are untangled, infinity becomes a closer and closer reality until the point where infinity reigns in your identity, and the creation process from that point of view, and along the way, but especially from the point of view of space, is much bigger and much stronger than when it is done from a dependency on finite objects. Because finite objects themselves come from the infinite space. And so it is, in a way, a path to understanding the existence that we live in.